You're listening to Home Sweet Home with Russ McClellan and friends. And here's Russ.
Hey, welcome back to Home Sweet Home with Russ McClellan and friends. Thanks for tuning in. I am very grateful for all of you that take the time to listen to me. But in all honesty, maybe you should be outside playing with your kids, having fun, doing something besides listening to me. Except for today, because today I got Jeff McCann. Jeff's calling in from the other side of the mountains. Jeff is a professional instructor at the University of Washington in real estate-related courses. He's launching this fall, and he's also a real estate development consultant. So thanks for calling in, Jeff. I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. Happy to be with you and learn more and talk real estate.
Yeah. Let's talk real estate. We were talking a little bit about the 100 versions of reality. Depending on who you talk to, you'll get a different version. I mean, I guess it makes sense. We had a year of a virus, a pandemic, a world pandemic, and we haven't had that since, 1918 or something? So it's not like any one of us know exactly what's happening. We don't exactly know what happens when you drop $6 trillion into an economy from Washington, D.C., and you fire up that printing press. We don't really know what happens when you homeschool kids and keep them away from churches and away from clubs. And we had a lot. It was an interesting year between riots and politics and everything in between. But here we sit in north central Washington. And one of the things you do very well, Jeff, at a very high level is real estate development consulting and specifically feasibility work. Now, could you describe what that means and then kind of what you're thinking about and what your services could do for someone that's going to be developing potentially?
Sure. And so, I mean, basically, I provide information. I mean, there's certain things, and people ask me, what does feasibility include? And some people, feasibility could spend $0 and walk on a piece of property and say, I love it, let's buy it. All the way through, months or years of doing evaluations of a property. And I try and tell people at a high level, just think ZATSUM, ZATTSSUM, zoning, access, title, topography, soils, sensitive areas, utilities, and a market study. And I'll walk people through each of those. And there's more elements than those, and you could go on and on with all the different things. But, when people call me and ask me about, hey, I'd like to buy this piece of property, and first thing I'll look at is the use you want consistent with the zoning? So if you want to put a home on a residential zone lot, great. But many times people may want to do storage in a residential area, and it just elevates the complexity. And so some of these items may take 2 minutes of research or 5 minutes, just a quick check. Yes, the zoning is consistent with your proposed use. And it's easy enough to figure out. But sometimes they aren't so easy. I mean, you think you have access to the property, but it's via an easement, but the easement never got recorded. And so maybe they've been using that access for 20 years, or there's a road to your property, but maybe you've got to fight or argue prescriptive use over, just an outright use that you have. So, with lots, I've seen some people that have come to me that have been stopped by the building department because they wanted to put a home on a lot that they were paying taxes on for 20 years that you would assume was a legal lot, but the county or city would say, well, this lot was illegally subdivided 20 years ago. It's an illegal subdivision. So even though you've been paying taxes on this lot assessed at $200,000 a year, we're not going to let you build on it. And unfortunately, I've had a couple people come to me in the last couple of years that spent over $200,000 or $300,000 on a piece of property that realistically I said was worth zero because of some element. And it usually is wetlands and in critical areas. And they assumed for some reason that the critical areas weren't what they thought, or they weren't there. I wasn't part of why they bought them. But to tell someone who just spent, $250,000 on a piece of property a year or two or three before that, if I'm a builder and I want to build a home on this, I'm going to have to do all this mitigation work to get the property able to be built on, and my mitigation costs for wetland restoration. In this one case, I didn't do the analysis, but I saw it. There was going to be about $600,000 in wetland mitigation work. So you just look at that and you say that no one can make money on this. So I encourage people, go through a full feasibility, look at zoning and access, review the title report for anything that's unusual on there. I mean, walk the property with topography, what slope becomes a critical slope. Soils, if you're need septic. I mean, will the property perk? What's the type of the, system? Will it drain? And the big one, critical areas could be, erosion, landslide, streams, wetland, critical habitat, and then obviously getting to utilities. What is it going to be on a well and the depth of the well? And Russ, back to that property you and I talked about earlier, on one property, I had wells that were at 200 feet and were getting 20 plus, 50 plus gallons a minute of water. And I had wells over 400 feet that were getting 2 gallons a minute. And it's on the same parcel of property, a big parcel, but that's such a huge difference in cost and challenges with the property. So I just try and help walk people through the process of the information we need to get through, that the buyer or the person can be comfortable with the property before making that purchase.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing stuff. ZATSUM is the acronym, ZATTSSUM, and that was zoning, access, title, topography, soils, utilities.
Sensitive areas,
utilities, and market study, correct?
Yeah.
And so that gets you the beginning. And then what's really interesting, if you're not in the real estate business or in the real estate development business, you might think that everybody knows what they know and that it's accurate. Like, you might think the people at the city council know what they're doing. Sometimes they do. Or you might think the people that work behind the counter at the county government that you're in think they know what's going on. And sometimes they do. But what we're not necessarily told, if you're not in the business and you feel like you can go do something, is that there's a lot of layers in between. And really digging deep. I mean, you talked about the very basics, right? And inside every one of those topics that Jeff talked about within that acronym, there's 1,000 layers potentially. And what's really strange is that there's very few properties that are exactly the same. And then as you relate, very few governments that interpret those rules exactly the same. I actually went through a development years ago where we were already building it. And all we were waiting for was a preliminary plat approval in the city government. And the last day, we didn't even go to the meeting, Jeff. And they said, oh, you're going to need a secondary access on that. It's like a little less than 100 lot subdivision. Well, our engineers, our attorneys, we didn't think we did. We were already building it with just one entrance. Well, that was a very big deal because where they wanted us to put the secondary entrance, we didn't own the land between us and that place. So we ended up going to court, filed a loop appeal, and we lost. In both cases, the city council and the judge said, well, what was happening adjacent to us was a big deal, and therefore down the road, you're going to probably need that. Well, that wasn't in the code, right? That nowhere did it say that. Like, if something is a big deal next to you, that this is what's going to have to happen. They just made that interpretation. And so we were a little bit taken aback. It cost about 3 years and $1 million to get over that. And so that taught me early on, this is a long time ago in my career, but taught me early on that, you really need to know a lot. And no matter what project you're in, there's always curveballs. No matter how smart you are going in, there's always potential curveballs. And it's not for the faint at heart. And it doesn't mean people did anything wrong. There's just agency after agency after agency that really, I see it from my perspective anyway, don't have the ability to predict with absolute certainty. And but with that being said, bringing you in and people like yourself that can help try to understand it is the first step. Would you say that's fair?
Yes. And as you were mentioning, we never have perfect information. There's always the unknowns, and you discover them down the line. But as much as you can have up front, the better. And as I've heard so many people say, and some of the best projects they ever did was the ones they passed on, because they found out that whatever reason that was there, that the gut feeling or the unknowns of we still have to go before this council or a tribe or a community group, that could be very powerful. And even if they don't have the direct ability to be the city government to stop a project, they're very powerful and influential when it comes to meetings. And so, again, as I tell the people, I'm no lawyer and I'm no accountant. I don't give legal or financial advice. I provide information, and we're going to work together as a team to discover this. And with my clients, I tell them too, I mean, I can do this, and some people want to learn right along with me and see what I'm doing. It's kind of like get in the ditch with me and figure out how we're going to solve or get information on this. So it's their money to decide. And sometimes it's a mom and pop just trying to figure out how to expand their property or their business. And other times they're big builders that need help to get through this.
Yeah, well, there's some subjectivity that go along with it, that's for sure. And we got about 30 seconds left in this segment, and we'll come back. We're talking with a professional instructor at the University of Washington to be. He starts this fall, Jeff McCann. Jeff's also a real estate development consultant. If you're interested in learning more about Jeff and what he does for developers, all the way down to the mom and pa that want a short plat a lot, that they owned, get a hold of him, or you can look at his website, jeffmccann.net or jeff@jeffmccann.net. All right, we'll be right back with our third segment and continue talking with a real estate professional instructor and development consultant, Jeff McCann.
Keller Williams.